like to thank everybody for coming tonight. Based on the conversation and the smiles, it looks like everybody's going to have fun tonight. So hopefully by 7 o'clock or earlier, you'll all still feel that way. But before we get started, I'd like to see if our chairman of the Planning Commission and of the council have any comments that they would like to make.
Well, first, I want to call this meeting to order for the county council in this joint meeting. And if you could see the agenda online, you would see that it says we have an invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone will please stand, and Fab is going to lead us in the invocation, then we'll do the pledge.
Pray. Father God, we come before thee this hour and thank you for allowing us to get this opportunity to assemble together, dear God. We pray that we have peace and harmony and unity, even though sometimes we disagree with, but Father, we want to be bonded as one and do what's good for the best of the citizens of this county, not personal, but as a whole overall. We thank you for life itself, for health, and strength, and everything you give us. Safe passage. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so a couple things, a few housekeeping things if I can, and then if Fab has anything too, from as chair of the Planning Commission. A couple things. First, Doc tells me we have to pass around this microphone no matter who's speaking, so I apologize. So there may be not as quick conversation. We may say, stop, hold that thought. So it helps our folks taking minutes for both of us. So we'll pass this around as you want to talk. The other thing is, this is our chance to say, from a county council standpoint, I think, thank you to the Planning Commission. We appreciate what you do. And I'm sure we'll get into things that we might disagree on and things, and that's fine. But, we appoint you, and we all believe that you are doing a good job, and we thank you for that because we know how thankless your work can be sometimes too, just like sometimes ours is. And so we just want to say thank you for what you do. Just a couple other quick notes. Roger will probably mention this. We talked about this in our retreat 2 weeks ago with County Council, but the way we say it is, Roger's a very nice man, but he's going to keep you moving. So he will keep this process moving, and so we won't go too far down a rabbit trail if we don't need to, and some of those kind of things. So that's really all I have. But Fab, you have anything?
First of all, we'd like to thank for the opportunity for us to, get together here. This is always communication is important. As long as we can communicate, we can get things done. And I think we have good communication on the Planning Commission with the group we have, and they've been working together. They're one of the best groups we had in quite a while. Even though we had good ones, but it's best, and we hope the council work with them. We work with the council, and we look forward to a prosperous year this year. Because we know we all got pros and cons, but hope we leave in unity as well today. Thank you.
All right, with that, unless somebody else has something they want to add, I'll turn over to Roger. But first, anybody have anything?
Will we be live tonight? Yes. Okay, that's all I want to know.
You could be as lively as you want. If you want to start dancing out there or something, that'd be fine. First of all, thank you all for coming. I think this is really important that the county council gets together with the Planning Commission on some kind of a regular basis so that both parties could go ahead and determine how we could work together for the good of Edgefield County and its citizens. I'm always reminded that as the administrator or city manager, as I was before, that we have three basic roles. And those three roles are we serve the staff that we work with, we serve the council, but most importantly, we serve the citizens. And that's why you're all here. You volunteered to be there to help determine where Edgefield County is going to go in the future. And too often I see the planning commission gets bogged down in bureaucratic type stuff and setting rules and regulation. Are the people following it? What do they need to do? Instead of actually looking forward as to planning for the future for this county. And so that's what we're here for tonight. Tonight, the goal is by the end of the meeting is to come up with 3 or 4, maybe at most 5 items that we feel together the Planning Commission will be working on this year. The first year I was here, I got a chance to meet with the Planning Commission on a regular basis. Now, we were in kind of a turmoil, almost chaos, with a lot of things going on. But the moratorium was the big driver, a lot of concern about comprehensive plan, a lot of concern about zoning, and we had lots of meetings throughout the county, kind of pulled that all together and came up with, as I told you, maybe not an exceptional, maybe not even great, but it would be a good set of documents that we could live with for several years to come. And then as time went on, we could make adjustments to those documents. And so those are some of the things that you all have been doing this past year, looking at recreation, looking at some of the zoning, looking at some of the things as far as subdivisions versus PDs. So again, the first part, I'm going to do 99.9% of the talking. This is not a time to resolve how we're going to solve the issues. It's not a time where we're going to go ahead and even get into a lot of discussions on the issue. That'll be done later on during this next year with you as the Planning Commission and with you at the County Council. Tonight is to go ahead and to try to brainstorm what are those items, though, that we need to take on to bring this county forward. I want to start the meeting by just going ahead and recapping in about 10 minutes or less what we spent 2 hours on 2 weeks ago with the County Council. And they had a similar retreat. I sat there and kind of pushed them forward, and we came up with 10 items that we felt were really important. 4 of them we felt were high priority that we wanted to work on immediately, and then the other ones we're going to continue to work on, but there's these items. They're listed on your sheet, so you don't have to write them on down. Try to make it a little bit easier. So I'm just going to run through these so you understand the background of what County Council looked at. One of them was EMS. EMS is a critical item. Anything to do with what I refer to as public safety. Public safety is EMS. It's your sheriff. It's the fire departments. But in this case, we're talking about EMS. The number of EMS calls has increased by over 30%. And where are those calls at? They're in the Meriwether, Sweetwater area. And I don't have a magic ball or anything here to look at, but that's going to continue because that's where almost all the development is taking place. Now, you're getting a few houses here and there on the north side and the west side, the east side. But I'll tell you, I work for a couple of towns, and there hasn't been more than a handful of homes built in the last few years within the towns themselves. So we're concerned about the growth, the number of cases that are coming on, and so we're trying to look at the future. Where do you need a new EMS station? Do you need one? Do we add a 4th ambulance out there? Do we somehow have some kind of a transport for people that maybe don't need an ambulance, but need to get to a location for some test or some other issues? We're working with the fire departments to get more of them to become what we call first responders, and the county has agreed to pay for that educational end of it, so those individuals could help respond quicker. Meriwether does a great job. It's a large department, and so they have first responders there that react to a lot of the calls in that area and really helps EMS out. And so we're starting to get some of the other fire departments. So even if there's an accident, they could go ahead and react to it. But EMS was a critical item that we felt was going to be our, if not our top, one of the very top items that we need to be working on. So just to get an ambulance today takes 2 years to get one. So we got one in January. In February, I asked council, can you authorize the money so we could order in the next one? And so it's been on order now for close to a year. And hopefully in another year we'll get it. But that's how long it takes, and that's what you need to be just planning ahead. So kind of keep that in mind as you think about planning. The next item is the county workforce. Without a good workforce, without good employees, whether it's an elected official or elected officials department or someone that works directly for David Cadell, we need to make sure that we continue to find the best individuals to work for the county. And how do we pay them? How do we go ahead and bring forth the resources? It's not always about money. Job satisfaction is just very, very important with county staff. And so David is looking towards what do we do to retain the people we have, and how do we go ahead and work to educate them so that they are ready for the new technology, they're ready for the new operations we have, and then how do we get succession management to replace some of those individuals that we have. The third item we discussed was the fire departments. Got 7 fire departments, 3 are in towns, 4 of them are, I'll call them the rural areas. They're funded by tax dollars that are on your tax bill, and so a certain portion goes to all the fire departments from the taxes and a certain portion from the vehicle. And they range anywhere from the north side just getting a little over $50,000 to Meriwether getting over $300,000. But the reason for that is they have a district or a geographical area that they serve. And today, a new tanker or pumper costs around $400,000. We bought one in Trenton about 7 years ago, and it was just a little over $200,000. We bought one in Edgefield a couple of years ago, and it was just over $300,000. And so the price is going up. If you need a ladder truck, Lord help us. I don't know where we'd get that money, because we're talking about close to 1.2, 1.3 million. So equipment's costing more. It's harder to get people to volunteer to do this. You're talking about, at a minimum, 1 monthly meeting that you have to attend, plus all those fire calls. Volunteerism is getting difficult. And so county has stepped forward and said, we'll start paying for the training for the first responders, but we'll also pay for training for you to become certified. And so we know that's going to be very, very, very important. How do we provide mutual aid between them? How do we work together? There's just a myriad of things that we're discussing. And there's a fire board, and they're meeting. During COVID, they kind of slipped and kind of fell apart, but they're back meeting, and the last meeting went very well. When I was working here as the interim, we were having a heck of a time. David's here now. They're pulling together. Doing a great job, David. Economic development. If you look at Generac alone and the amount of money we're going to get in from Generac and the amount of money that industry provides or in commercial provides, a residential home, it's taxed at 4%. Commercial, rental, industrial is at 6%. Plus you look at a Generac, which is 60, 70, 80 million, depending on how you want to look at the equipment inside and outside. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're looking at, just from the Generac alone, next year getting about $185,000, I believe you told me, in new money, just from that alone. So you could see how important it is to recruit new industry. But the fact of the matter is, 85% of your growth in industry comes from existing industries. You know, their expansion. It seems like every 4 or 5 years, Bondex is expanding, and they're expanding again. So those expansions are very important, and we need to make sure that they have the proper infrastructure, fire, EMS, and all the other things that go along with it so that we could keep the industry we have here, plus looking at how do we go ahead and bring new industry into our area. Give you an example, when I look at economic development, and a lot of times we think about economic development, it's residential homes, it's commercial property. Back in the around 2004-05 time period, we did a study in the city of Aiken to say, what value of a residential home will pay for the services that they receive. So how much money does that residential home bring in taxes and other things, fees that you would have, and what cost or value of it pays for the various services? At that time, it was about $170,000. Now, that's in the city of Aiken. It would have probably been a little bit lower up here in Edgefield County. But saying all that, we're talking that every home that's probably over 2,000 probably pays for the services that they receive, those under. And so we're not here today to say, okay, well, let's only approve homes that are of a higher value, because we need a mix of homes for the population that we have throughout the county. But again, residential property doesn't always pay for those taxes. Doesn't pay for the workforce that you have here. Doesn't pay for those services. You need a mix of the commercial. You need to have that industrial. You need to have that residential. And so it's important to have that blend as we're talking about it. It's important that the Planning Commission, when you're looking at zoning and other issues, yeah, we do need apartments, we do need townhomes, we do need single family, we do need commercial. We need to have that multi-mix, that especially when you look at a PD you would have. County recreation, quality of life for individuals, whether it be for family or individuals, becomes more and more critical for the society. I bet you if we went to the Meriwether area, 80, maybe 90% or more of the recreation that they're receiving is from North Augusta. It might even be higher than that. The only ones that might be going back towards Edgefield for soccer, maybe some baseball, are those individuals or families that are saying, we're going to send our kids to Strom Thurmond. We'll send them to Strom Thurmond because they want to go into the Career Center, or they would like to play football or some of these other sports. But otherwise, those other families are going towards North Augusta. We need to look at recreation and find out what can we provide either jointly with the towns, maybe with North Augusta. But if we're going to go ahead and build a new recreational facility, and I'm talking about something that might have outdoor sports, maybe some passive, maybe a pavilion, maybe even a gym someday, we need to find the property, because it takes 3 to 5 years before you can even start looking at opening up any of those facilities. So have to be forward thinking towards our recreation. I do know that we are currently working with a couple of towns on getting their gyms upgraded. Johnston is looking at coming up with more of a passive activity for recreation. And so how do we jointly work with one another to go ahead and provide the best quality of life recreation activities? One of the largest and quickest sports that's growing, I know for younger folks it's probably not there yet, but it's pickleball. And it's a craze, it's a much smaller court. Pickleball is, you're playing with a wiffle ball, but it's, especially for people my age, it's the rage these days. And so I know that the town of Edgefield's taking their tennis courts and striping it for pickleball. They're doing the same thing inside there. They used to call it the gym. They're now going to call it the activity center. But again, we have to think, where do we want to go in the future with recreation? Solid waste, we talked around, I'm not going to talk about residential, because you guys from the Planning Commission and Council have heard enough about that, and we'll get into some of that in just a moment. But solid waste, we pay, first of all of our solid waste goes through Tri-County, Saluda, McCormick, and Edgefield. There's a transfer station near the golf course up in that area by Strom Thurmond, however you want to identify it. All of our waste goes there. They gather it all for the 3 counties, and then it's sent to 3 Rivers, which is at the Savannah River site. And that has, was it 9 or 10 counties? 9 counties that gather together. So we're the 3, and then there's 6 other counties that send all of their waste to that location. It's very expensive. We're paying about $1.5 million just to provide transferring of all the waste that's gathered at those back to Tri-County and then to ship it to Three Rivers. And we went up around 25% in our costs just this past year because of fuel costs, labor costs, and our garbage volume has just gone up. So again, we need to look at that. Does the Sweetwater station need to be expanded? Do we need another location in that area because of that growth? You know, thinking, where do we need to go in the future? What are the hours? We've added some additional people down there. But again, that's an ongoing issue, and it's a very important one because the vast majority of our residents do not get pickup by a commercial provider. You know, they go to the convenience centers. The county has a number of buildings that are going to be vacated soon. The jail, the sheriff's office, the magistrate's office, the old judge, the old building where the judge used to be at. You know, those are all owned, and we need to start looking at what do we do with that? How do we reuse those buildings? I told David, I said, well, we could make the jail into a haunted house or something. There's not a whole lot of value in that thing. We'll probably just knock that one down. But we have to start looking at what do we do with those buildings? And last thing that we talked about was, do we need to have some kind of a leadership academy? Business people, employees, town employees, citizens, where they would learn about the different services, different things in the county, at the state level. They have this in a lot of other different counties. And we thought at some point in time, maybe we need to have that leadership academy. Those,
You skip number F, or letter F, I should.
I said we'd get residential development is something the Planning Commission works on a lot, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail as we go through some of these other issues. So, looking at some of these areas, one of the things that seems to come up a lot is just the various ordinances that you have. I know that when we redid the ordinances in 2021, we changed a lot of things on density and lot sizes. We talked about adding possibly a zone for multifamily and where should all that go. That's kind of an ongoing issue as development occurs. So, Doc, do you have anything you want to add? Here's the microphone.
So I've pretty much spoken this to death for the Planning Commission, but since you're all here together. Item number 3, we don't want to look at that as in the broad sense, like across the entire county. I think the important thing for y'all to do will be to look at specific areas, specific items, specific issues that you see coming up and allow the Planning Commission to make a recommendation for that specific item. So instead of saying, I'd like to look at zoning, let's not do that. Say, I'm concerned about this area of Sweetwater Road, and let the Planning Commission look at that area of Sweetwater Road. I'm concerned with Bettis Academy Road. Let the Planning Commission look at specifically that area. Let's not open it all the way up again. Let's just focus on individual items and areas. Major subdivisions, the last rewrite, County Council and the Planning Commission made that twice as restrictive as it was before. Anything over 5 lots is now considered a major subdivision and has to go through that whole process. There are other things that you can do to tighten those ordinances up if you want to. But remember that unlike a planned development, whatever you set is for a major subdivision is set, meaning staff will not even consider it if it doesn't meet those requirements. So you have to be very specific on those requirements. And that really, if you want, I can just tie that into number 4.
So number 4 is one that at times there seems to be a little bit of confusion between what is a planned development versus subdivision regulations. Subdivision regulations We already have some standards, we have some rules applying to the size of the lot, the setbacks in the lot. A planned development is, we made a lot of changes to that in 2021, you know, as far as the amount of open space and impervious area, size of the development. But a planned development gives you the opportunity to work with the developer to come up with the best subdivision that meets the needs of the surrounding area, the citizens, and what council wants. The best example would be Dr. Kenyon worked with the residents along Williams Road last year and took Heritage Place, had the commercial development taken out, moved around some of the detention ponds, took some entrances out, changed the mix on the housing to where the developer felt okay with it and was satisfied. Council felt okay with it. And more importantly, the citizens around there felt very comfortable. So it was a working together, and I recall that meeting, the citizens had met with her on July 4th in the evening and worked through things that they wanted. I talked to her the next day. I got the developer on the phone that afternoon before the council meeting and worked through some details, talked to the citizen before the meeting, and by the time we got to the meeting, we said what we were planning on doing, and then all these people that showed up just said, we're satisfied, we're happy. And so we were able to work things through, even at the last moment, getting some changes made. Heritage Place came back to us about 8-9 months later and finalized the drawings that we had there. So that's the planned development. That's one that worked out real well. Then there's others that don't work out quite as well. There's a property on US 25. You may all remember it. Sharps Overlook. And again, there's some controversy in what should be built there and how should it be built. And we tried to compromise, and I know Doc called them up several different times, but we weren't able to come to any agreement. But that's the PD. It allows you to try to develop what is going to work best for that piece of property. Again, there may be several environmental factors. There may be some streams running through a property, or a cluster of trees that you want to save, or maybe there's even some habitat. And so you could work through that with a PD. Subdivisions, they're set up by the zoning. So remember, 80% of our county is not zoned anymore, so they're not going to be under subdivision standards. And so if you want to develop in these areas that are not zoned, then it's going to probably be a PD. But if it's in a zoned area, we're already set up. Now, doesn't mean that they can't come before you, and you could have some special conditions that upon approval or exceptions that council and you all approve. But again, subdivisions, there's a set of rules and standards already in place. The plan development gives you a lot of options to work with that developer. But again, if we feel we need to clarify that further within the ordinances or make some changes, we could certainly do so. The next area.
Can I jump in just real quick? Because this is part of that definition, I think, that we probably all need to be on the same page for. So this is probably a good time to ask this question. Having talked with Doc and you in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, we know a subdivision is a subdivision, end of the story, but a PD has a lot of room for negotiation, as you just explained. However, my understanding is a PD does not have to have commercial in it to be a PD. It can be, and it should be, mixed use, because that's what a PD is, but the mixed use does not have to contain commercial. Now, is that correct?
State law said a planned unit development. Again, we're getting into some semantics, but that it got tested down in Charleston, and because they didn't have commercial in there, and the state came back and said a planned unit development has to have commercial. We don't have planned unit developments. We have planned developments. So what happened is the planning community throughout the state got together and said, well, let's go ahead and just change the terminology of this, and planned developments do not need to have commercial. It's a mixed use, so you're gonna have a variety of housing, and commercial is probably valuable to have in some areas. But it used to be, giving an example, the large development that we had in Aiken called Woodside Plantation has a lot of, it has a certain percentage, I think it's 5% had to be commercial. And so there's a doctor's offices, and there's some, they're building a grocery store now, and so there's some commercial element in there. I think it's on a case by case. When Heritage Place first came, it had commercial. After discussing with citizens and council decided to take that out. But again, I know Planning Commission thought we should have commercial. And so that's where I think the chairman says sometimes we're going to agree to disagree on certain things. The next item we have here, and I'm just trying to move us along, is the highway overlay districts. We introduced in 2012, I got involved with the planning group at that time, and we actually had an overlay district for Martintown Road. That somewhere along the line that got removed, but we had developed for Martintown Road, Murrah, Five Notch, and one other, Sweetwater. Yeah, just a little bit of Sweetwater. You have consistency, whether it be on highway cuts. A lot of times you'll take the right-of-way and you'll try to come up with some consistency on it. Let's say that you wanted to make Sweetwater Road into an overlay and said, okay, we want Sweetwater Road to be residential. And so you would go up and down Sweetwater Road. You might say, how often should it have curb cuts? Maybe you, because it's such a high-speed, high-traffic volume road, you'd want, in subdivisions that were a certain size, de-acceleration lanes, so they could move out of the way, or left-hand turn lanes coming in. Maybe there's some areas that you want to start kind of like a theme and put down certain trees along the right-of-way, or maybe even sidewalks in some areas. It becomes more urban. But a highway overlay is something, again, planning towards the future. Is what do you want US 25 to look like? We have a highway overlay up to Greenhouse Road. But again, that highway overlay probably needs to be looked at every 5 years or so to say, okay, this is what we had then, but now that we see the growth on it, we might want to make some changes to it. It normally involves fencing. It normally is going to involve lighting, parking, just a number of common elements that you want to look at. So to protect the residential area around there, but also as commercial or other multifamily gets into those areas, you have a set of standards that are going to be common along those areas. So highway overlays has a place, not everywhere, but it's something that you may want to consider as we move forward in the very near future, looking at, and I believe, this is just Roger speaking, but Martintown Road is something you really need to look at. It's an area where, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on the way you want to look at it, North Augusta is creeping further and further into Edgefield County. You can look at it as being a terrible thing, or you can look at it, well, that's just life, or it's a good thing. But they have their set of standards. Maybe we need to start looking at some standards also. The next item is one that I added on because I started getting really concerned about this for the county. We're talking about we need EMS. We're talking about solid waste issues. We're talking about the sheriff needing more vehicles. We're talking about the fire departments needing more assistance and more help. Many towns and counties have a user fee for new residential units. What's happening now is this past year we had, actually the last several years, we had 200 or close to 200 to over 200 new residential units. That's required us to have more schools, more ambulances, more sheriff vehicles, more EMS stations, you know, on and on and on the infrastructure of our needs. It's causing all the residents inside of Edgefield County to pay for that. Whereas we wouldn't need those. Let's say that as of tomorrow, we don't let another new residential unit in. Well, you probably don't need to go ahead then and start looking at expanding EMS in the schools and anything else. But we know that's not going to occur, so should we put the burden on all the existing residents, including the new ones, or just put a little bit of burden on those new residents to help pay for some of this infrastructure and some of the needs that we have in the future? Back in, it was either the late 90s or early 2000s, a lot of local jurisdictions started adding user fees. And they were taking those user fees and using it for, they just pretty much put it into the general fund. And so it got used for a lot of different things. The legislature has come back and said, if you're going to put a user fee on, it has to be very specific, and you have to make sure that it's used for the purpose of way that you set it up for. So in other words, if you said, we're going to charge $1,000 on a new home. So I'm a builder, I go in to get my building permit from Doc's office, and I'm going to go ahead and write out a check for $1,000. That would be put into a separate account. It would be designated that this percentage of that's going to go towards ambulances or EMS. This is going to go towards the sheriff. This is going to go for, and you'd have A, B, C, D. And that's going to be up to Andrew to go ahead and develop that ordinance. But it has to be very specific as to how you do it. Let's say you had $1,000. That's over $200,000 you would have now in the bank to start doing some of these things that you want to look at in the future. It's not unheard of when was it Richland? No, it's not Richland. It's where Hardyville, Ridgeland. That area they put on, depending on the area, was $3,000 to $5,000 per residential unit. And again, how much you'd put in there and what you'd look at that, again, that the Planning Commission would look at this item, they'd look at what other jurisdictions, North Augusta, Aiken, the surrounding counties throughout the state, and then you'd come up with something that would be reasonable. Again, we don't want to have it so high that it's going to kill growth, but you also need to look at how do we pay for future growth. So that's what the user fee would be. So those are the items that we wanted to discuss. So this is your chance to go ahead, and we're going to start listing here on this board. We have a scribe over here, April, and she's going to scribe up there different topics. And then at the very end, we were going to ask you, if we get more than 3 or 4, then we're going to be asking you to do some voting on how you feel are the most important items. So this open discussion, so it's an open mic night.
Why don't we just start with the first planning commissioner and work our way around, and that way we get a list.
No pressure, Todd.
Well, I know what Todd wants.
Well, you know what Todd wants.
Well, I think, as a whole, as a body, both as a planning commission and as county council, Edgefield County is going to continue to get a tremendous amount of pressure for growth, whether that be residential, commercial, because we have land. And so what I don't want to do or have to look back, I'm not going to be here, but our children look back 30, 40, 50 years and say, we should have done a better job planning forward to keep Edgefield County. And some of the things that I've brought up to the Planning Commission is we need to envision if the comments that have been made really over the past many years have been around keeping Edgefield County. And so that includes doing things that will keep Edgefield County that way. Some of the things we've done, which is making bigger lots. Edgefield County is known as a rural community. It is, and that's what we've heard from the residents. We've heard really from county council. We've heard from even the planning commission. So as an envisioning type piece, it's, what are the things that we do, I feel like as a planning commission, that we understand there's going to be, areas maybe around the towns and certain areas that will be more dense, but what is it, the things that will continue to reflect the rural community of Edgefield County? And this includes things visually of what you have to do. I'm a big proponent. I'm a big proponent of zoning. I'm a big proponent of overlays. I'm a big proponent of conservation subdivisions, of planning forward and codifying, I use that word, codifying, Edgefield County so that we keep Edgefield County, because if we don't, then if we don't plan for this and plan rightly for keeping Edgefield County rural, then it will unfortunately turn into everywhere USA. And that's something that I don't think the residents want. That's not anything that the planning commission wants, and I don't think that's anything that the county council wants. So that's what I'll say starting off.
And if you don't have a comment, that's fine. You can just pass it
I
on.
don't have much to say at this moment, but my long plan of view is that if we do our planning, that we keep in mind that, like I said, it's a rural county, and when we talk about, we don't want to change the way of life living in the area that people have been here all their years. We come in the county, we find that sometimes we get a lot of input from people from all over the country, and it can have an impact on how we plan our developments and so forth. That if we get enough, when people come in and change your lifestyle that you had all your life, we want to kind of keep this in mind as we do our planning, that it doesn't have, because McCormick County is suffering from that now. And so, we have a political world, and the power structure can shift completely around if we don't do our planning, that we can keep it kind of balanced on the whole county as much as possible. And I'm going to close at that.
I'm kind of like in between Todd and Fab. Yes, I want to keep everything rural. Yeah, I do lean towards zoning. And I do believe that if we can create something to draw people to a certain area, and I don't mean just not Sweetwater Road and all like that. We have much more area and a lot more things that can happen. But if we be forward thinking into things that we could draw in, right now I couldn't tell you what they are, but maybe give me a couple nights sleep on it and I could. But to draw people in and make Edgefield what we want it to be, rural in nature, but to grow. And I know there's ways to do it. I've seen it from where I came from. Right now it's grown too much. And yeah, I'll say that, it's grown way too much. But there is balance. So, I just think keeping balance in all of this and have a little forward thinking, yeah.
I would like to say that I'm kind of like most of us here tonight. We looking for growth, and we know growth is coming here, and as long as we can kind of keep it until a certain point that it won't get out of hand, I am very in favor of it. I noticed that I hear a lot of complaints up in my area about this shouldn't go to the user fees, about how much the lower county is seeing Meriwether area, and then up on our end, it seems like nothing up on our end growing. And they seem like the tax base is when they pay for their taxes, most of it lean towards Meriwether area, but it's not that. It's because that way the growth is there. And I can understand maybe later years we'll be getting some growth up in North Side, but I am definitely, it's three on here, and I like to see really improve the EMS and the fire department, because we know we need that in economic development.
I've got two quick things. One is, and I mentioned this at our retreat, I would like the Planning Commission and us to look at specific ordinances related to the zoning that we have. I'll just give you one very made-up example, but you get what I mean. let's just say, you know, one of our ordinances says you can, in zoning says you can have, if you got water and sewer, you can build on a half an acre. You can build a house on a half an acre in a major subdivision or something, let's just say. You know, in those circumstances, you know, when we think about density, should that be 3/4 of an acre instead of half an acre? You know, and there's a break-even point, like you were saying before. There's a point where the developers are going to say, sorry, that's not worth my time and money. I'm not going to ever build that because you made it, the lot's so big, I can't afford to build enough houses anywhere to make money. So they won't ever do it. So there is a break-even point, but I just think it would be worth looking at those ordinances to see if there is a little bit of something we can do to reduce density. And again, like beauty, density is in the eyes of the beholder. Because what might be dense to you may not be dense to me. You know, is 50 dense? Is 100 dense? Is 150 dense? I mean, what the number of rooftops would you say are dense? It just depends on your perspective and how spread out they are. So that's just one thing I'd like to see us look at. The other one, in the comprehensive plan, we have overlays that says we're going to do overlays. So we either need to create them and put them in place or take them out of the comp plan. One or the other. So if we think overlays are a great thing, we need to discuss that and get on the same page. If we don't, take it out of the comp plan. But we all agreed that it should be in the comp plan originally, so I just passed that on.
Okay, so I echo what you said about all of the things that you said, and I agree that growth is coming. I mean, we have to be better prepared for it. I do want to mention something, and the only I need to say that Jerry and I, the only reason I'm getting to mention it first because the microphone came to me first, but he's going, don't take mine, don't take mine, but user fees. So I would like to explore the impact in user fees, for sure, for the new development and the new residential growth that we are seeing. So it's not falling, the burden is not falling on all the existing tax base that we already have, the taxpayers. And EMS, public safety definitely is always high on my priority list. And I do think we are going to have to give some discussion to recreation at some point too. So I know you guys have talked about this too and have had discussions on what y'all think. The Planning Commission, y'all talked about recreation as well. And I think that we need to kind of get some idea of where we think as the two groups to steer that ship as well. So I'd like for us to have that conversation together as well.
Of course, naturally, the retreat EMS, especially with the bombshell that we got dropped on us today about what our neighboring county's fixing to do, is going to affect maybe the workforce that we have to keep. And also, with Mr. Brown, we do need some future vision to protect what we have, but mainly the user fees to make these people pay for all these services that want to come to our great county. But user fees, EMS, and like I said, protecting what Edgefield County is all about.
To kind of sort of piggyback on Brown, and this is being honest, I am for growth. I just want you all to know that because growth is coming. I am definitely for growth. But how do you keep Edgefield County balanced with the growth that is coming? That is one of my concerns. Definitely for the user fee, I think I think the developers should pay something. I do. Recreation, you know I'm a big fan of recreation. But definitely, I'm for the growth. I'm a country girl, but I'm definitely for the growth because I can't stop it. But my concern is how can we balance it? How can we keep Edgefield County balanced with the growth? That's something I would like to know.
I agree with everything that was said. With me having a young grand, I'm definitely for the recreation because she have interest in this and that, but I don't feel like I need to take my money to Aiken or North Augusta. It needs to stay here in Edgefield. And if you know, the older generation is getting older, dying out. The younger generation, they're not staying because there's nothing here. So we definitely need to work on, like you said, the growth is coming. But we gotta let the resident know that we can withstand the growth and we have something to offer. And with saying that, all the other things come in play. You're gonna need the overlay. You're gonna need the public safety. Because you're gonna need the, all of that. The user fee, I'm with everybody else with that. Why put that burden on the ones that are already here? They done paid their dues. So the newcomers, like she said, or he said, charge it to them. That's my view.
Gosh, guys, I hate this part. You know, we've increased the sheriff's budget, we've increased the employee budget, we've been spending. I'm very concerned where we're going with all the spending. You're talking about EMS needs more money, fire department needs more money, everybody needs more money. We don't want to pay more taxes. Our taxes are already high. So I'm just worried about where we're going. Yes, do we need it? Yes. Where are we going to cut back so we don't increase our taxes? As far as you're worried about growth, this is just my opinion. The density, the growth, is going to occur where the water and the sewer is. That's going to naturally balance because the water and sewer is on 25. It's not up Martintown Road. You know, the growth is going to occur where there's water and sewer. I don't know, we talked about a master plan. I've not seen it. The Waterworks was going to do a master plan to tell us what the plans were. You know, we have 100-year-old pipes in town that need to be fixed. We have a lot of things that need to happen, and I just see money, 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 and I'm worried about our taxes. But I do think the growth will be balanced because where the water and sewer is.
I agree with a lot of what has already been said by everybody. And I'll just say, I don't know if y'all know, I'm a real estate agent. I mostly serve North Augusta, Aiken. I get to Georgia sometimes. And I've sold a few parcels in Edgefield County, but I'll tell you, when buyers come to me and they're like, I want to find a place in Edgefield County. Great. What are you looking for? I want 2 to 5 acres. And they expect that that's what they're going to find in Edgefield County. I have sold properties in Windsor, and my buyers buy that because that's the only type of property offered. That's the only product that they can find in Edgefield County. But it's kind of like, we'll settle for this because we want to get into Edgefield County, but it's not what we want. But we'll be here for a few years until we can afford to get the 2 to 5 acres. And I understand the cost of developing a development with large lots or with large acres. I understand that. But that's a product that is not being offered anywhere else in the CSRA. I get clients that want 2 to 5 acres and they cannot find it. It's very hard to find. And that's something we can offer in Edgefield County, and we can keep our rural feel out here if we offer that type of product. I feel like Meriwether area has been affected for the future because we've allowed these small lot, high density developments in there. And especially along Sweetwater Road, it doesn't fit in with the surrounding areas and the surrounding farms. And so when, now we have this beautiful rural area and then bam, here's a high density development. And in talking to my neighbors in the area, they're very upset about that. They're upset about Windsor and Anniston and Cooper Place, Tavern Hill, because they feel like these were allowed in an area they consider rural. So I would like to see, I know growth is coming. Yes, we need to control it, but I would like to see that the future developments fit in with the surrounding areas, that you don't put, a brand new subdivision in a hayfield next to other farms. So I think it needs to fit in. So I would like to see our ordinances and our zoning in some way to address that so that we can offer that product to people who want to to buy in a rural area, that we can still offer that product to them and not just a house with, a neighbor 20 feet away. I'd like to see us to find a way to market and encourage commercial growth up Highway 25. It is a major U.S. highway. I know there's some residences there, but it's a major U.S. highway. That's the perfect area for commercial growth. I don't know, maybe y'all remember, years ago, North Augusta decided that the Exit 1 area would not be allowed to be commercial. The citizens spoke up and said, let's keep it residential. And on their side of I-20, they're mostly doing that. They've allowed a few small businesses in there. And like Todd had mentioned, right when you cross into Edgefield County line, we had a bunch of small buildings go up for video poker. All those, Fox Creek High School where they were, there's a financial services company, the other small center where Doughboys Pizza is, those were all video poker places. And now other businesses have moved in since that was outlawed. But I agree with Todd, that really created some eyesores right there coming into Edgefield County. I think they've improved the look of the properties, the businesses that have moved in there. But growth, we need to decide how far into Edgefield County are we going to allow that commercial growth on Martintown Road? And do we have a separate commercial overlay and then a residential overlay on Martintown Road? I think we definitely need to address that. Sweetwater Road, we have we have industry. I consider the gas tanks heavy industry. Are we going to put a line there to stop that growth any further down Sweetwater Road? So we definitely need to overlay there. And I agree with the user fees. It's quite disheartening to hear in a restaurant in North Augusta to overhear a developer building out here saying, overheard him in a conversation saying he didn't care what his development was causing the community as far as congestion on the roads, need for the schools and the EMS, that wasn't his problem. He was there to build houses and he didn't care about the impact on the county. That was very disheartening to hear. So I agree we need to have user fees and make them care. And then I was trying to see what else I had agreed with. I think that was it. But I would like to see us to keep Edgefield County's rural feel and our history here and limit the growth and development.
As Rhonda said, the one thing we have to do in balancing all this is we're not going to have higher taxes. We can't afford to have the higher taxes. So, as we look at these things, is how do we balance the needs of the future versus the funds that are coming in? David, congratulations. But he's got it all figured out. What we want to do right now is to look at what we have here. Is there anything else that April did not capture on this? Can you see this? Okay, that we need to add to this list. If not, we're going to go ahead and start voting on what are going to be the top.
I got one more comment, just to kind of close the loop. I'd like to say that both as a planning commission and as county council, if we continue to look at models that we know that are broken, then the model that we will apply to Edgefield County will also break Edgefield County. Some of the things for zoning that we look as it being a fixed. Sometimes these conventional models in the past that have created the issues and continue to create issues in communities. I think we can look no further than across the river, Columbia County. I think they've tried. I think they've done some interesting things, but the growth, they stood in front of us 30, 35, 40 years ago in kind of the same situation. I would like for us to know as a planning commission to look at best practices and look at places that have applied a different model, that have applied knowing that they want to keep their communities rural and feel, and to search those out, to understand the process they went through to, understand how they could grow, but also stay rural in its nature. Because I would say that 80 to 90% of how communities grow are in conventional in nature. It's apply this zoning to this and this zoning to that and just kind of let it go. We'll deal with, kind of 5-acre tracts, density, whatever. But I think we need to look extensively and look hard at communities visually, growth-wise, and community-wise that we think is a good model for us to be looking at, and understand what did they do. We're not the first county to go through this process before. So let's look at the places, the communities, the counties, not just in South Carolina, but other places that have done this well, and let's go learn from them, because that's where they've been through the ups and downs, the hips and valleys. How do they have commercial? How do they deal with residential? How do they deal with sewer pressures? How do they deal with water pressures, user fees, all these things? To me, that is the challenge in front of, especially the Planning Commission, to go do that along with staff and understanding what we can do.
Okay, so this first one here is an underlying statement that kind of governs everything, keeping Edgefield's rural nature. So that's not going to be one of the things we're going to be voting on. We'll be voting on these ones down here as to what we feel are the primary things that the Planning Commission will be working on as a group during 2023. That doesn't mean we won't keep in mind some of these other things, but the major concentration will be on the ones that we're going to vote for. So to try to do this in a democratic fashion, you each get 3 votes, 3 high priority votes, and then I'll just ask how many of you want to make one of your high priority this one, then this one, then this one, and we'll then determine from a collective viewpoint. And this is the Planning Commission and the County Council. You get a vote too. So on highway overlays, how many of you feel that's a high priority? Just raise your hand. You got that, Doc or April? Okay. How many of you feel that trying to come up with, as Todd was trying to explain it, we're going to have this growth, but we need to balance it in the right way so that we can keep this underlying statement up here. How many of you feel like that's the most important? Yeah. Okay, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. The public safety, that's your EMS, that's the fire stations, that's the sheriff's office. So how many of you feel like EMS is something that's critical that we need to be looking towards this year? You all are, I'm keeping you honest, you're all keeping tab of those 3 votes, right? I got a great memory here. No, I'm watching you especially. Okay, density, flexibility in zoning. Again, looking at, we only have about 20% of our area that's zoned, but again, how do we keep that flexibility? Sorry. No one has that as high.
Density and flexibility kind of grows with balance, is it not? I mean, doesn't that kind of go together?
Yeah, can we combine growth and balance?
Yeah, I was going to say that user fees and public safety could also be combined.
No.
Well, what else would we use user fees for?
They could be used for a lot of things. We may be even looking at our schools. So. Okay, how many of you feel that user fees are high priority? Lisa had hers up too. Okay, once you're out, you're always out.
Wait, we combined though, right? So now.
No, they're really, Recreation? Three? Three. I was especially keeping my eye on you two. Okay. Retail strategies. Okay. Economic development, retail strategies. Okay. And then looking at other counties, municipalities that are trying to keep things in rural. That, to me, that goes up here. We'll okay, we have here two definite winners. So this, along with this. And so we have public safety and overlays tied. So we'll make that a 3A and 3B. Is that okay, Doc?
I would say make it overlays, since public safety is gonna be more of a county council direct item than a planning commission item. Well, my question would be, what is the planning commission going to recommend for public safety other than user fees?
Okay. Thank you, Doc, for clarifying that. That's it. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman. You guys can have dueling mics.
That concern this, right? Basically, like I said, public safety, it's user fee and so forth. Density is zoning, user fee, recreation. Guess what, we got to pretty well balance out what we're doing. If we're gonna balance it, we got to look at the growth with balance. We got to look at the user fee, which we really need. We got to have the user fee. Just like, I know we don't like to pay taxes, but we got to. But we already have. I know that. I know it's separate, so we got to combine all that with user fee. And we want to kind of keep it on a basis where, we don't want it to be a killer, but we want something that got to be done. And we just got to face facts that sometimes we have to do things. Anything you do that going to help hurts. That's a fact on anything. It costs you. You don't get anything for nothing enough. And people get that idea, so we want to keep it on that fact that this is what necessity. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. Some of the things that we're doing as far as when it comes to balancing out the distance and so forth is necessary, but we've got to look at what is the necessary way, the best way to do it. Anything we go at, that's what we got to balance it out that way. Don't look at how I feel about it, but overall, what the overall effect is going to be in the long range. What's going to happen down the road. Those are mistakes that we made in the past. When we made a lot of decisions. We just looked at what, for example, someone made a statement about the builders. If they in it for money, somebody's gonna suffer because they don't care. And I mean, just being facts. And I've been in business, building all my life, and I never got rich because I was the type of person that I wanted to look at the future of it. If I buy your house, I look at not what it's going to cost or what this, but what would be the best way for you to have. Look at, what would be best for me or best for everybody. Anything we do, we need to look at the overall picture for the little guy and the big guy and do it fair. Go ahead, Dean. That's all. I'm finished.
Before I ask us for an adjournment, does anybody on county council need to have any final remarks? Everybody good? All right. Well, let me just say this before I adjourn then. So thank you to Roger and to Doc and to April and to Aretha for helping get all this set up tonight. Appreciate it. Oh, I'm sorry, and David. Yes, I'm sorry, sitting right here. I'm looking at it out here and I'm not looking beside me. David, I'm sorry. Thank you. Appreciate all of y'all getting this set up. Appreciate y'all showing us where the guardrails are. That's always helpful to those of us in elected office and appointed office, knowing where, we can not get in trouble and get in trouble. So we appreciate that. And before we adjourn, is there something else, Roger?
So when we were working on the zoning ordinances in 2021, 2022, we said we got the general essence of what we wanted. Now it's time to start tweaking it to fit so we could get that rural nature, so we could make sure that we're going in the right direction. So I think you have a plan before you, and I know that you'll be able to guide that and get that to something that'll go back, for instance, like on the user fees, once you make some decisions, it'll go back to county council. Once you have some thoughts on the ideas on your public safety or trying to balance that growth, it'll go back to council with some ordinances to finally be approved. So I really appreciate all the hard work. The Planning Commission doesn't get enough kudos for what they do. I mean, you get a lot of abuse from citizens, you attend meetings, and so from my standpoint, in working with you in the past, thank you for each of you for what you do. It's a thankless job in many ways, but it's really, really a critical job, an important job. So we really do appreciate each of you.
Thank you, Roger. Is there a motion to adjourn? All right, let's see. I heard Ms. Ireland made the motion and then Dr. Kenyon seconds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.